Welcome back, Strong Long fans. I know last time we did the Lightning Raptor and Moon Bomber, and we saw just how crazy dangerous they were, causing mega quakes with their big feet, like really strong earthquakes. And you saw, I know I told you that, probably. You may be thinking that they were the most dangerous one, and I probably did tell you that the Urkin was the most dangerous one, but actually, both me and you are wrong, because the one you're seeing on screen is the most dangerous Lunerboonie. Yeah, she is cute, but truthfully, she is the most dangerous one. You know why? Because she is a living bomb. Yeah, you heard me. She's a living bomb. She's not just any living bomb. She is a living bomb that can literally create one of the most strongest shockwave you ever seen. And it can pretty much, like, it can throw cars into the air, and it can like knock over buildings. It can just badly damage buildings and cars, all sorts of, and even utilities. Good thing the strong one, well, it could easily hurt, like injure or kill people. But thank goodness the strong lungs are indestructible, so they can't really die. I mean, if the shockwave hit them, they all easily would have survived. Although, yeah, but this girl's shockwave is awfully dangerous. It's awfully bad. She is the most dangerous Lunerboonie. And then, let's say she actually does explode. Oh my gosh, she's actually so cute. I really do want to hug her or embrace her, but unfortunately she's dangerous. I made her up in a way that she's dangerous. So you gotta watch out, y'all. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, the living bomb. I know. So yeah, we do a recap of the Lightning Raptor and Night Bomber. And then after the recap, we see the same scene where Fango and Spoonie and Crawly says that they have to get to superhero business. They're like mecha suit hero type business, you know. Well, let's say they get in a different mecha suit. Let's say it's like let's say it's only like a mecha suit that's the size of a telephone pole, and then and then let's say it's got a lot of weapons still, but once he says, we do see that Spoonie and Crawly says, why do we have to get in those mecha suits? Those ones look too small. Don't you know how big this creature could be? He says, well, we can probably get a look, and if she's too big to fight with these mecha suits, we can get into our bigger ones. So yeah, that's the compromise Fango makes. And then Fango, or not Fango, and then Spoonie and Crawly just accepts it. They say, okay, sounds like a good plan. And then we cut to them flying to the crater site, and then once they land at the crater site, they see that it's actually a cube. They see that it's a cube, but it opened already. He says, well, that's odd. And then it was just a big cube. It was actually a rocket ship of some sort, like a rocket, and we saw that a cube came out of it, and we saw that there was a cube opened up like a treasure chest. He says, what was in? Well, that's odd. It's just a rocket. It's just a spaceship. He says, doesn't matter, man. Still, it must be a Lunerboonie that's smart enough to fly a spaceship. And look, that cube or box that's there, that's probably where it was controlling the ship. He says, we gotta find it. They look around, and then Crawley sees footprints of the creature. He says, look, footprints. They follow the footprints, but then we see that the creature that's when we see that the creature suddenly, like, sweeps up her own footprints. That's when we see the creature sneaking up behind them. We see just how, we see she's also, let's say she's a little bit bigger than them, but she's literally the right size. But maybe those are the right size mecha suits to deal with this girl, she says. She doesn't say anything. She just glares and squints at them. And then that's when we cut back to Fango and his friends looking around the woods trying to see where the footprints are taking them. He says, and then we see Crawley says, "Aw, dang, looks like the trail ends here." And then Fango and Spoonie says, "Ah, dang," they look down. They they just gaze down or whatever. They put their heads down, kind of like this, well, you know what I mean. They just go "Oh, man." He says, and then Crawley says, "Don't worry, we'll still find this creature, I'm sure. It just may take some time. You know, everything will be alright as long as we concentrate and keep looking." Is that right? Yeah. Get it? And then Fango says, "Oh yeah, right. Yeah, we just gotta keep looking." And so they continue to hunt. Okay. No, sorry, I'm just being distracted by a car passing by my house. I really should concentrate on the podcast, not get distracted by cars that drives by my house. Yeah. Maybe I should step a little closer. Yeah, I was looking at it from the kitchen into the living room, but anyway, yeah. You gotta keep your eyes on the podcast, not what's outside. Sorry to stop talking. As long as my brain could concentrate, I probably wouldn't be doing this. Yeah, see? Like that. But this time I'm gonna concentrate more. And then once Fango and Crawley and Spoonie, they say, we're probably just gonna, we get a time card that says 2 hours later. We see just how bored they are trying to look for the creature. But the creature is hiding. She's hiding in her ship. She's hiding in the storage. She's hiding in the part where she stores things. She notices them coming back. She gets in. And she jumps out of the part where she drives the ship. She gets into the storage part to hide. And then we see as she's spying on our three main, three people through, the door. She's like, I'm gonna get those guys. And that's when they return home. And then back at home we see just how tired they are from looking for the creature. He says, "Dang, that was boring." He says, "It certainly was. Hey, you know what we can do?" Says Spoonie as Spoonie asks, And then Fango says, what? We can watch TV until we hear the news that there's something going crazy. And then Hacker calls Fango on the phone. He says, oh, hey, Hacker, are you... And yeah, and then Hacker says, Did you defeat that Lunerboonie yet? Fango says, I knew you were gonna ask that, but unfortunately we couldn't find her. Or him. I don't know if it was a male or female. I mean, I know there's, there's more. I heard there was more female Lunerboonies, and I know there is. I can clearly tell there is. Yeah, we couldn't find it. Fango. So we looked everywhere, but couldn't find the creature. And then Hacker says, oh, well, that's a shame. But maybe when it does show up, but when you do discover it, make sure you get that thing out of Strong Lungs immediately. Because I don't know how dangerous this one is. And yep, Hacker. Fango says, I don't know either. But it may be. Hope it's not too dangerous. But however, unfortunately, it is very dangerous. Dang is she. Yep. And then that's when Fango. Yeah. And then that's when we see her looking like hiding from. We see how big she is. She's like. We see her pick up somebody's. We see her look underneath somebody's, like, messing with somebody's car. She's glaring. She sneaks around the town. Then she notices someone come in. And then they're coming to their car. Then she knocks a tree over while she hides. He's like, what the heck? And then and then we see her sneak underneath the bridge in New Worth. I'll show you what New Worth looks like here pretty soon. And while she's underneath it, that's when she puts a bomb on. That's when she puts a bomb on a tanker truck. Well, actually, the tanker truck led her to the bridge. She puts a bomb on it while nobody's looking. She's not really that big. She was at like a gas station, like that was surrounded by a lot of trees, and she was hiding behind them. And then she finds a tanker truck pulling in. And that's when she like puts the bomb on the truck and sets it. She doesn't detonate it till she wants to. She wants to like wait for like the truck to like maybe like get in traffic or like a lot of cars to be around it. And then that's when it leads her to the bridge in New Worth. And then after we see her put the bomb on the tanker truck, that's when we cut to Fango and Fangy in New Worth saying, Fangy, well, actually not Fangy and Fango, but Fango and Fangy and his friends, Fangy, Forky, and Walkie, they're saying, Hope. Well, it's great to hear that. I can't believe how many rewards Fango's been getting. And then Naimi says, yeah, it was crazy. Yesterday was crazy. I couldn't believe my eyes by those two big girls. Did you hear about those two like huge girls? The sun or like the lightning lightning raptor and night bomber, or whatever they're called. He says, yeah. Did you see them as well? No, I was in Greenridge by the time you were in Cransboro. Yeah, it was crazy. And then, and while we see them talking, we and then we see, and while they're talking about the the battle from yesterday, that's when Bergie shows up telling them that Hacker said that there's another Lunerboonie that crash landed like 2 hours ago. Or yeah. And he says, and he told them that Fango and Spoonie and Crawley tried to look for it, but they couldn't find it. All they found was a spaceship that in the crater that the Lunerboonie left behind. And there's this. Oh, wait, I didn't know it could drive a spaceship. Bergie says, turns out it can. And then he tells them, and then he says, so if, yeah, he says, I wonder where on, and he just says, I wonder where on Earth this new Lunerboonie could be. And that's when and then meanwhile with the living bomb who still hasn't yet exploded, we see her put the bomb on the tanker truck. Not only is she a living bomb, but she has like other bombs that she likes to play with. And that's when she says, ah, she makes like an ah face. She sees that the truck's about to cross a bridge into Neworth. She makes like a face that goes like, ah, yeah, that kind of face. She smiles and she's like, now that's where I'm gonna detonate that bomb. That's where I'm gonna detonate that tanker truck with the bomb I just put on it. Is on that suspension bridge. See how much chaos it creates there. And when we see, while we see if she keeps following the tanker truck, we see her sneak underneath the bridge, and then she spies on the tanker truck from underneath. And that's when we then we cut to Forky in his car and Lockie in his car, like going the opposite direction. And we see him just going, yeah. He's going the opposite direction. We see that the truck, and then we see that when she realizes she sees like two of her enemies. She sees that we see that she's got like a lucky like chain she's wearing. Well, I haven't put it on her yet, and she's like ready. She's like, then she presses the bomb, and then she presses the button to the remote, and then she sets off the bomb right before Forky and the truck pass each other. Once they get really close, that's when she detonates. And once the truck and Forky gets close enough to each other, that's when she detonates the bomb. She goes, and yep, the bomb explodes. The tanker truck explodes as well. The trailer, the tanker truck, and scares Forky. He's like, whoa! And then we see like other cars. We see Lockie's going the opposite direction too. Like, whoa! He says he stops. He slams on the brakes. It's like a few like other cars, and like they rear end him. And we see we see he collides with a few other cars. We see that like Forky almost drives off the bridge. His car hangs over the edge, but then and then he stops like right next to the edge, and then this blue van accidentally, he jumps out of his car and and right before the van hits it with him inside, he jumps out right before his car falls off the bridge into the water. And then he watches as his car falls into the water. And we just see, and yeah, we see that a school bus. Yeah, we see as the truck tips over as well, and we see a bus hit it. And then we see the fire spreading to the bus. We see that all the other cars that crashed, and that's when we see everybody just yeah yeah yeah. And then after the chaos on the bridge, we see there's like a whole bunch of traffic. And then that's when that's when Fork says, I need to report this to Fango immediately. Then we cut back to, and then that's when we cut to the bridge and the black smoke from the tanker truck on the bridge. As the camera angle's zooming out a little bit as we're looking at the bridge, and then we cut to the Fango's house. We cut to the house that Fango, Spoonie, and Crawley lives in, and then we cut to as we're slowly zooming into their house. And that's when we see, and then we zoom in, and then we cut to the inside of where, like inside their house where they're watching TV, and Fango gets a phone call, he says, and then he gets the report from Forky. Forky tells him to switch to the news immediately. He says, what? It says switch to the news immediately. Wait a second, let me see. Oh my gosh. And when he switches to the news, we see that Sam the Ant's already on TV. He sees the chaos on the bridge. He says, what? And then he says, oh no. That's when we see Hacker saying, I know the Dreamgate just... And that's when after a while we see that. That's when a lot of people says, come on, Fango, why didn't you take care of the Lunerboonie that caused that? Or he says, I don't know. People were so unsure on how that tanker truck unexpectedly exploded. Because like nobody appeared to hit the back of the truck. Like the very back of it just burst, and then the entire trailer burst, and then the truck tipped over. And then he says, we see there's fire trucks trying to put out, and then we cut to a scene where there's fire trucks on the bridge trying to put out the fire. And everyone is forced to take a detour. And to get into Penford, they so sorry, man. In Strong Lungs, they actually closed the road. Yeah. It's because Strong Lungs do not like being caught in backed up traffic. Because in Strong Long's rules are different. Because when there's an accident, they close the road that has an accident on it. That's when they put up a detour sign. It says, please take a different road. And that's when, while Fango's watching TV, watching the news about the accident, that's when a lot of news workers comes into their house saying, they're asking why Fango didn't get to deal with the Lunerboonie that caused. They come in, Sam says it must have been before that happens, Sam says it must have been a Lunerboonie, and then a lot of cameramen comes in, they ask, Fango, if there was a lunar, why didn't you come out to stop it? Fango says, look, he says, don't be so late. You shouldn't just be here and just be so lazy and just let the Lunerboonie destroy Strong Longs. Fango says, I know, I didn't. The reason why we came back and watched TV is because we looked around for the Lunerboonie but couldn't find her. All we found was the spaceship. And then they say, the spaceship? Yeah, it's in the forest, right across the street from our house. And they see there's a nature trail. And they go and and then they get to the spaceship she came from. And that's when we see a lot of emergency vehicles surrounding the ship. And then they take it, and that's when we see a crane put it onto a truck and then bring it to the military base in Green Ridge. Okay. Yeah. So when after Fango, he says, and they put, Fango says, okay, since there was just an explosion on the Neuwirth Gate Bridge, it's time we get back into our mecha suits. Also, Fango and Spoonie and Crawley gets back in their mecha suit to look for the Lunerboonie that caused the explosion on the bridge in Neuwirth. They don't know who really did, but that's when they say, Fango says, we see that they're looking around still. That's when we see them get to the bridge. Well, that's when we see that the Lunerboonie that they're looking for isn't on the bridge. And that's when he says that he asks the truck driver if he's okay. He says, yeah, I'm fine. Thank goodness the explosion didn't hurt me. He asks the bus driver if he's okay. He says, yes. Thank goodness I didn't burn to death. Yeah, we can see that the fire truck's already put out the fire completely. But then Fango asks, is everything okay? Is anybody hurt? No. He says, okay, thank goodness, he says. He asks the truck driver if he saw who caused the explosion. And then he asks the bus driver if he saw he asked the bus driver if he saw the Lunerboonie, if he saw anybody do anything with the truck ahead of him. He says, well, no. He says, somebody says, I did. He says, what? I come from that purple car who almost drove off the bridge. Yeah, we see he almost drives off the bridge. Thank goodness I didn't. Forky says, I drove my car. My car got knocked off the bridge and it landed right in the water. And the dude says, how did that happen? A blue van. I stopped right next to the edge, but then this blue van pushed it right off. And then he suddenly, and now the blue van was the one hanging over the bridge. I just watched as my car fell right into the water. Or let's just say he didn't even mention the fact that his car fell into the water. He says, thank goodness. Let's just say that the other guy who's got the purple car is just saying he's lucky he didn't drive his car off the bridge. And he just tells him that. He says, I did, but he tells him, but then he tells him, he says, well, I didn't see a Lunerboonie did it, but I did see like a blinking, like I saw like, but what I did see, I just saw like a bomb on the back of it. A bomb? Yeah, it was like a little flat circular bomb with a blinking red light on it. I was just looking at it. I was concerned. I was saying, please tell me that's not a bomb. And when I was saying, and then suddenly, and as I was really hoping that it wasn't a bomb, the bomb exploded and I was wrong and it scared me, which caused me to swerve. Did you see? He says, okay, did you see who put the bomb on the truck? He says, no. He says, he actually finds. He says, okay. He says, but I hope we can figure it out, he says. And yeah. He says, did anybody see who put the bomb on the truck? Everybody said no. And then Fango says, then it's clear. He says, if nobody, then it's gotta be a Lunerboonie. Then it's gotta be a Lunerboonie. And I know one thing we're gonna do. We're gonna get rid of that Lunerboonie. And when we do, she ain't never returning to Strong Lungs again. Especially for doing that. At least nobody got hurt. He says, she must have been here. Can you guys look? And we do like a few scenes. We cut to like from scene to scene. Yeah, he says, then we cut to a scene. He tells Spoonie and Crawly to look for the creature to see if there's any sightings or if she's anywhere on the bridge. And then they say, you see? And then he asks, where the he asks where, and he says, where is this thing? We get to like every scene. He says, is it here? You see Crawly say, is it here? Or actually Spoonie says, he looks behind the towers of the bridge. He says, is it here? No, not here. We see Crawly say, is it under here? No, not here. He look around the bridge. He looks at the bottom of the bridge. Don't see anything. He says, not here. And then we can do another scene. He looks like in between the beams. He says, not here. Crawly says, and then we cut back to Spoonie saying, not here, as he's looking like right at the end of like the two ends of the bridge, underneath, like from underneath, doesn't see anything. He looks on, and we see Crawly look like he looks everywhere. He checks to see if it's sitting. Then let's say Crawly was looking there, and that's when we see Spoonie look on top of one of the towers. He doesn't see anything, and then that's when we see Crawly look everywhere under the bridge, looking around, and yep, they both find nothing, and there was another. No, sorry. Sorry about that. Just got distracted by a car again. Not. Well, I just saw it through this window next to me in the corner of my eye. But anyway, yeah. Yeah. He says they come back to Fango. Fango says, "Did you find anything?" He says, "Nope." And then we zoom into him very slowly. He says, He says, "Yeah, yeah." They say we looked everywhere. Yep. And then Spoonie and Crawly. Yeah, Crawly. Yeah, Spoonie says we looked under the bridge. We looked at the bottom of the towers. We looked on top of the towers. Even we looked to see if she was hiding under the bridge at the two very ends of it, but she was not. Or he was, the Lunerboonie wasn't there. And yeah, we looked pretty much everywhere. We looked in between the bridge beams and saw nothing. She wasn't even hiding on top of the tower. Yeah, looked on top of the tower. Yeah, we looked everywhere for her, but we found absolutely nothing. Fango says, "If she's not here, where could she possibly be?" That's what he says. We're slowly zooming into him as he's saying it. He's starting to get a little frustrated while looking for her, but he just can't seem to find her. And then meanwhile, we cut back to her. And then we cut back to her. It's like the meanwhile scene, like something like that. We see her walking past the phone base sign. We see her pour oil all over it, or we see her do that, and then she throws a match on it and sets it on fire while nobody's looking. And she runs. She doesn't run, she just walks into the trees to hide. She walks behind the bushes in case she gets caught. And that's when we see everybody. We see we see her doing all sorts of stuff. We see she's putting bombs on people's houses while they're not looking. And that's when we see she's looking for a good spot to explode. That's when we see her putting the bombs on everything. We see her actually set one. We see her trespass on private property, and that private property is a left turn signal water tower. She melts the fence with her hands. It can pretty much melt anything. We can see she puts a bomb on the left turn signal water tower. She puts a bomb on its left turn signal as well. She sneaks on. She just notices it. She jumps really high. And yeah, she's just pretty. She's like a spy. She's really sneaky. We see her. That's when we see her detonate. We see her put a bomb underneath in the middle of the street. And when a whole bunch of cars crosses it, we see people are turning left. She puts a bomb on all the turn signals. And that's when she detonates the bomb. That's when she presses the button when people starts going. Because when there's traffic, when traffic gets the green light. Yeah. Well, he does it while traffic are stopped at a red light. When he sees she sees how many cars there are. And while nobody's looking, she can see that everybody's is on their phone when they're not supposed to be. And then that's when she puts the bomb in the middle of the street. And that's when we see one of them. That's when we see the first one get the green light. And that's when we see that one direction. And that's when she sees. And the traffic, the directions with the bound with the most cars, like the direction with the most cars. When she waits for like the sides with like the directions with the most cars coming from them. She finds like a lot of cars waiting for the light to turn green, and once they do get the green light, that's when she detonates the bomb. As like the left turn traffic and through traffic are going. And then she sees a truck carrying like gas pump, like gas tanks. And once the truck drives like past it, that's when she detonates the bomb. And it actually doesn't just detonate that bomb, it detonates all the other bombs she put all over the place. Yeah, it even destroys, like it puts a hole in the left. The truck explodes and all the houses she put bombs on, everything she put a bomb on explodes. Some of it actually gets completely destroyed. She just destroyed a left turn signal water tower, and it actually knocked over the cell tower, bumps into the cell tower, knocks it over. It actually crushes a gas station that she just put a bomb on. And then it crushes the building. Yeah, and there was a tanker truck at it. She's getting lucky, and she's like saying, she laughs. She's just so lucky. It's magic, and that's when we get another. That's when we see something appear on. That's when we see Sam leave the area. That's when we see another field reporter on a big screen in Newarth. We cut back to Fango with his friends and Fangy with his friends, both of them all together, and that's when they notice something on like a big screen in Newarth that is reporting. There's a field reporter saying that there has been multiple explosions in Phone Bay. And here's the part where suddenly we see the Lunerboonie sneak up behind them. And then all of a sudden she suddenly decides. And that's when she's just ready to detonate herself. And that's when we see her orbs globe. And he says, "Whoa, what's that?" He says, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" And then that's when we see her. She explodes, and the explosion knocks, and then the cameraman, and then that's when the scene turns. That's when the TV, like the monitor on the building, that's when the camera turns to a static screen once she explodes. He says, "Fango." That's when they gasp. They realize that the Lunerboonie was sneaky. She was a sneaky. She's being sneaky. That was her. She's a living bomb. And I didn't realize she was that sneaky. He says, "We gotta stop her." They rush to Phone Bay, and then that's when we cut to them flying their way to Phone Bay. After we see the like explosion knock the camera on the monitor, like on the building monitor, we see it turn to static, and we see that Arthur, who's on the anchor, yeah, Arthur the beaver, who's the anchor, and he's like, we see how shocked he is. He says, "What was that?" As he's pointing. And then Fango says, That's when we see Fango show up. He says he sees just how damaged Phone Bay is. He sees that even the skyscrapers are on fire. And then suddenly, and then that's when we see them land in Phone Bay, and that's when we see the alien girl land right in front of them. She says, we see she's even bigger than them. We see says, listen now, little girl. And that's when we see her. And that's when we and then Fango attacks her. She roars. We see this big like explosive force come out of her mouth and pushes Fango back, and this stuff, and here's the part where she suddenly snaps more. And then that's when Spoonie and Crawly actually gets her. And Fango actually gets back up and joins them. He goes like, pshh, and then they shoot her. He says, did we get her? Yeah! She's not moving. We did it! And then Crawly says, Fango? Yeah, after Fango walks up to touch her. Well, yeah, he walks up and touches her and she doesn't move. He thinks she's dead, but she was in cardiac arrest. And then she opens her eyes in front of us when Fango's not looking. But when Spoonie and Crawly is looking, we see Crawly. Crawly says, Fango? And then Fango looks at her again. And that's when we see her turn stronger. She actually turns from like a child to an adult. She gets bigger, and she actually grows bigger. Now she's really big. And then she roars, and then Fango, that's when we see her get strong. Or maybe let's just say she gets bigger. She doesn't, yeah. Let's not say she turns into an adult. She just gets bigger when she gets angry. Huh? She's attacking Fangy and Fango. And then they fight their way. They try to outrun her. And then she lands right in front of them. Then they fly. They actually end up. Then they try to hide in Cone Springs. He says, looks like we're safe here in Cone Springs. And that's when we see the girl land right next to them. And then she explodes. And then we cut to a view of Cone Springs. However we see it. But we cut to a view of it being blown up by the strong shockwave. We see a mushroom cloud. And we see the shockwave throws Fango, Spoonie, and Crawly. They go like, ah! Throws them so far they actually end up back in Green Ridge. Fango and Spoonie and Crawly says, this Lunerboonie's too dangerous to fight. And let's say she actually throws them into Road Falls. And then she appears there too, and then and then Spoonie wakes up. Well, we don't see her land there. And then she, well actually, let's say we do, she just lands there. And then he says, oh no, guys look! And then she explodes again. And then they get thrown into Green Ridge. They go, ah! And they land. And that's when he says, then she gets closer and closer and closer until Fango has an idea. See, he's got a grappling gun armed and he does this. So yeah, Fango, you see his hand is a grappling gun and he grabs onto one of the utility dolls that I've showed you before. Here, yeah, it's these things. So yeah, these are the girls. He uses one of these things to defeat her. Fango just grabs one of them, and then that's when, and he pulls it down, right, and then it lands right on her. But before it does, she notices it, and then her angry face turns to a scared face. She looks up, and then when she sees the utility doll is about to fall on her, she screams. She's like, ah! And then it crushes her. And then we just see her arms sticking out the side. And then Fango says, or like before Fango crushes her, I should have done that part. He says, we're on to your tricks. We will not be your victims anymore. That's what he says. And then that's the part where he pulls the utility doll and crushes her. And then after that, he says, this is what you get for blowing up the bridge in New Earth. And he says, that's what you get for blowing up that tanker truck in Phone Bay and Cone Springs and Road Falls. and that's when we cut to them back at home. And while the mayor, the governor says, when can I give them this? When on earth can I give Fango this reward? Fango says, we're back. We just got the Lunerboonie who was causing chaos. And he says, oh, finally, here you go. He says, thank you. Well, let me get out my mecha suit to get it. So he parks his mecha suit back where he had it. Same with Spoonie and Crawley. They park their mecha suit back where they were standing, like where they were supposed to be. And then he gets out. And once they get out, they get the reward. And then he says, thanks, Governor. Now I finally have my reward. And then they all laugh. And then the episode ends like that.